All right. We should be good to go. Every time I get one of these things off the ground and it actually works, I'm a little surprised. So for everybody who's tuning into this, I want to thank these guys for making the time. It's a different time, everywhere in the country. We got people coming from East Coast to West Coast to talk a little football, and we've been talking scheme and stuff all day, which is great. And tonight, maybe we'll touch on some of that as we go, but I really wanted to try and get some coaches from across the country to talk about building high school programs. And I think it's something that, as a coach, you really get a chance to ask a lot of other people outside of maybe your immediate league, how do they do things, or what do they find help them be successful, or, how do you build a plan? And there's so many different situations in Canada. We've got, a number of coaches, whether it's from Cegep to high school football, and high school football can look very different based on what province you're in and even what league you're in within those provinces. So really excited to have these guys on tonight, and I'll kind of let them introduce themselves. Farhan, do you want to go first? Because, if there's a Canucks goal, we might lose you here for a sec. You want to go first, and we'll do quick introductions, and then we'll get into it.
All right, I'm Farhan Lalji. I was the head coach at New Westminster High School here in British Columbia. I've been a high school coach for 32 years. I started the program at New West in 2003, and I was the head coach there until the end of the 2019 season. And that's about it. Also on the board of directors for BC High School football. So you guys know the other part of what I do on TV, but that's the less important part.
Awesome. Coach Naggy, do you want to go next?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jackson. I'm Jason Naggy from Assumption College in Brantford. I started coaching high school football 2002, worked my way through the Assumption program, and currently the senior football head coach since 2017.
Awesome. And some of you guys may know this, but I coach a lot of Jason's guys in the summer. A lot of them have come to play for me. So I think a lot of my high school credit in terms of being a coach myself in Ontario goes to a lot of Jason's players, which is helpful. Coach Leo, do you want to go next?
Sure, and thanks again, Jackson, for having me on. My name is Marcelo Leo, head coach at St. Andrews College in the Conference of Independent Schools. I've been at it for 20 plus years. Started with the Toronto Catholic Board back in the year 2000 while I was still playing overseas, did some coaching, and then started the high school program at Villanova College in King City. Also a member of the Conference Independent Schools, and now been here at St. Andrews for the last 2 years.
Awesome. Coach JF or Coach Yonkis, you want to let people know where you're coming from?
Yes. Thank you again, Jackson. My name is Jean-Francois Jean-Claude from Champlain College in the Lennoxville Cegep League in Quebec, Lennoxville. So I'm a head football coach for the Cougars since 2006. Had a short stint at Guelph University in 2017, 2018, and I was back to Champlain 2019. Thank you.
Awesome. Coach Pelly?
Jackson, thanks for having me. It's pretty crazy. I'm, very young in this journey of mine. So I'm Coach Pelly. I'm the co-head coach at Bev Facey Composite High School in Sherwood Park, Alberta. Really just stopped playing about 4 years ago, and then got into coaching, got some really great experience early coaching at UBC with Coach Nill, and he kind of threw me to the wolves. And it's been awesome. And I'm really excited to get to talk to everyone. So it'll be awesome.
Awesome. Coach Dyer.
Yeah, thanks guys. And it's nice to virtually meet you all. I know I've heard your names certainly multiple times. So I'm John Dyer. I'm the co-head coach at Citadel High School in Halifax. And I've been with that program since my playing days, since 2008 is when I first started, and done stuff with Provincial and Team Canada, and just kind of touched my toes in a few different areas. But I'm really happy to be here and excited to talk some football. I don't want to disappoint too many guys because I know it's a downtime in the country, but we've got a spring high school league starting up in 10 days. So it's good timing for us in Nova Scotia. And I know that sucks for all of you, but we found a way to get 10-man football going with our limitations of 70 total players and coaches. So we're excited to get things rolling this spring.
Yeah, good for you for finding a solution. And yeah, I'll edit out all the comments in the chat from angry Ontario coaches and players and Ontarians in general. But well, that's a topic for another day. Thanks, guys, for doing this. And what I'd love this to be is a chance, not just for the coaches on here to be involved in the conversation, but if you're watching, this is going to be, I have 2 questions for these guys selfishly that I would love to hear their answers on that I think will help others as well. And then after that, we're just going to open it up, to questions from the chat. So, any questions I can start to think about those and put them in the chat, and I'll kind of moderate from there. But, first thing, and I think right now it's kind of a weird time, obviously, like Coach Dyer said, I think he's the only one of us that's prepping for a game anytime in the immediate future. But one of the things I'm always interested in is you kind of take for granted, like usually like when you get involved with the program, you're not the head coach. So you do what that program's always done probably, or whatever the head coach does. And it's one of those things, I think the more people you're around, the more you realize, wow, there's a lot of different ways to functionally run a football practice. And especially at the high school level, you're going to deal with challenges that, obviously running a CFL practice is one thing, running a basic practice, summer kids or whatever is another thing. High school, there's a lot of different realities there and, challenges you have to deal with and guys with jobs and stuff like that and handling that. What's one element, and it can be of practices or meetings, and it could be structure, or it could be, a certain period that you have that you think really helps benefit your players and lets your guys develop at a really high level. What's one part of either your practice structure or something you do in meetings, could be off the field as well, or even strength and conditioning you related that you think other coaches in the country could benefit from. I don't know if anyone wants to take the lead on that one or has something that comes to mind right away.
I can take the lead if you want, Jackson.
Coach.
Anyone here?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say when you said that question to me, it really got me thinking about, minute per minute what we do for our practice schedule and that, so it was a nice little break in the day when I started thinking about that stuff. I had trouble putting it down to kind of one specific thing that I think works efficiently and allows our athletes to develop efficiently. For me, running our senior practices, I keep it highly structured like all of you do, I'm sure. No wasted time, no wasted reps is kind of a mantra that I kind of use with it. And we know if we let football players waste time, they will gladly waste time, right? So I keep it structured, keep it focused on task, whichever section or segment we're in. I found that including a special teams segment each day was beneficial for us. Last season we played. I've been a part of teams before where your special teams practice was maybe toward the end of the week or one segment near the end of the week, and that I found that those days or when players knew that, okay, we're doing specials for half the practice, again, they get into that wasted time mode and lack of focus. So what I've done the past 3 years with our senior team, put in a special team segment every practice, and we usually kind of run it mid-practice just to break things up. Kick off one day, kick return the next day, punt, field goal, all that stuff. Just a 15-minute high intensity focus on that special team throughout that practice. And I found that kept them focused on that. And it was a nice way to break up kind of the routine of a practice for them. The other thing I started doing the last couple of seasons is mid-practice conditioning. We all do conditioning in some way, shape, or form, but I put it in the middle of the practice, added a segment of that, a short segment, just to kind of tire the guys out before we roll into an indie drill segment or into scrimmage. I wanted them to see how they can perform when they're a little gassed, because that's going to happen in a game, right? And that way they can feel comfortable with it. That way they know what to expect. And I found that it kind of increased their focus a bit too in the next segment. So run a little conditioning, move them on to whether it's their indie period or whether a scrimmage period, inside run, whatever, skelly. And I found it increased kind of their focus a little bit on the next task and benefited us quite a bit in 2019.
That's some similar things for us as well.
Awesome.
Early in practice for us.
I might lose you at some point.
Can you hear me at all? Or are you losing me?
Good.
No, we got you. We got you.
Okay. And are you seeing me okay? Because I'm seeing kind of everybody else in one direction, and then I'm looking at my camera, I'm in the other direction. Am I okay?
Yours is sideways, but that's okay. We can hear you.
That's probably the story of my life.
I'm not sure how to change it.
Yeah, maybe the next time someone else talks, I'll twist it and go the other way. But for us, some similar things. We always open practice with special teams. We generally open practice with what we call live for 5. So we come out of our stretch period and we would go right into 5 plays of live scrimmage to start practice as a bit of a tone setter. And it was generally a goal line period or a red zone period. So we do 5 plays of live scrimmaging, and we change the emphasis depending on the day, if it was a primary offensive or a primary defensive day. And then we jump into special teams. So our 15-minute special teams period at the start of practice would always be divided up into 7 minutes of teaching time for that team. So, if you were a gunner on punt team, or if you were a protector or an up back on punt team, like you'd be teaching different skills in that moment. And then the last 7 minutes would be a team period for that special. So it'd get divided up evenly. And, when you had the big man special teams, because you use most of your linemen on, say, PAT field goal, I would take all the skill guys that weren't involved in kicking or holding, and they'd go down on another side and they'd work on jet sweep timing or back shoulder fades or end zone jump balls, anything that was practical to their skill, as opposed to having them just watch, and just to echo what you guys were just saying earlier in terms of no wasted time. So we would always kind of split that up in terms of how we did special teams. Conditioning, we did it right before team period. We had like a 10-minute hard conditioning right before we started team for the same reason, exact same reason, just to get guys fatigued and get them in a position to do their scrimmaging at that point. In terms of big picture, as I've talked to coaches around the country, I was just talking to the coach at Dakota High School in Winnipeg, and he said, look, we got like 30 coaches. Great. And then I've talked to some that have 5 coaches. So one of the things we do for us is we have one coaching staff that handles our junior and our senior teams. So we have one staff, you each have a position. And when the varsity team is on the north side of the field practicing offense, the JV team is on the south side of the field practicing defense. So our coaches switch, the players don't switch. And then if a player is playing up or, has a role kind of on both teams, and they can kind of go back and forth, and the systems and terminology is the same. And then as far as off season for us, and I don't know how many of you are close to the border or not, but, we say to our kids all the time, work hard, which is a real nice thing to say, but what does that mean? And I thought it was really important for us about 7 or 8 years ago that we showed them what that looked like and put them in a position where they could experience it. So in Seattle, which is a little over a 2-hour drive from us in a non-COVID world. So we didn't have high school football here in COVID. I know most of you guys probably didn't. I actually coached my son's youth team last fall. They did have an 8-game season, so that was a blast. He's 12 years old. But in a normal off season for us, what I do every spring, early in the off season in January or February, is I take 15 kids, 5 incoming seniors, 5 incoming juniors, and 5 incoming sophomores. And I will take them down to a place called Ford Sports Performance in Seattle, which is like a big time football factory that, the Seahawks train at, college guys training for the combine, and then the top high school players in the state are there. So they grind those guys hard. So I want our kids to go, they do a workout with them. The guy that runs the place is a friend of mine, and he puts them through basically 2 hours of hell. And when it's done, now our kids at that moment know what hard work looks like. They know what it feels like, and they can bring it back home with them, as opposed to just using some word and they don't have a reference point. I think it's important when our guys do that every year. It's a great team builder. Those guys are the people that I've targeted as leaders. But when you look at overall program structure for us, that's one of the most beneficial things we do. Don't tell them to work hard. Show them what that looks like.
Yeah. No, that's great, Coach. And I'm pretty sure, the common theme is definitely the tempo in practice. For us, that's one thing I really preach, is that tempo that all of us have mentioned so far. Establishing that routine, and also posting practice plans ahead of time. I started doing that last year, and I felt like our kids, on our Edsby platform or whatever school platform we have, they came out on the field. They knew exactly what was happening at each segment, when and where they needed to be. And that just really increased our tempo of practice, gave the kids, a chance to get mentally prepared for practice. As you know, most of them are probably going to surf over to my page a little bit during math class and see what's going on. So I'm pretty sure you guys can appreciate that. And then, the big thing, in my experience with Team Canada and coaching CIS, was that situational football. Really incorporating that into my practice plans has really helped. And I mean, quick, high tempo segments of, what 1st and 10, 2nd and short, medium and long might look like. And just having those team periods mixed in, real short, 10 plays or so, but having about 4 or 5 multiple team segments incorporated in practice, just to kind of mirror the tempo of what a game would be like. And at the same time, end those team segments with special teams that have to come off the sideline. So for us and for me, I found that's really been helpful. And then the one thing I started doing is that kind of one special play or one scenario where it's late game, minute and a half left, and on the clock, one timeout, a ball on the 35. Let's go, right? So those kind of situations have been really, really, really helpful for us. And then of course the conditioning has always been for me the no huddle type for the offense, and then for the defense, it's those perfect tackle lines and lines that we want to get them to when they're trying to go make a tackle, whether it's throwing a ball up on down the sideline and have everybody rush and then going to get the ball, that kind of stuff. So I found that, making it more game-like for conditioning has been really good for us.
For us, I think starts with the yearly calendar, the weekly calendar, the routine. The kids expect, they know what to expect, they know what drills and what type of practice we're running from day 1, day 2, and day 3. The meeting structure, we always start on time. We always hats off. Every meeting that we run, hats off, so the kids knows it, they know it. The topic that we're going to talk during those meetings, they expect it. So for example, on Thursday night, we review our protections, the pressures and stuff like that. So on Monday night, they know on Tuesday and Wednesday. So they expect what topic we're going to go over during those meetings. Like Coach Leo said, we show the practice plan during meetings, so they expect what type of practice, and they know, if we have a special period, they know about it. The practice structure, we like to do, again, the same drills, the circuits. And if there's a new drill that we want to introduce a certain time, then we'll usually try it during springtime, and if not, then during before the meeting, we'll show the kid. If we have a film on it from an NCAA team or CIS team, we'll be able to show them if there's a new drill. Tempo, that's something we coach as well. We say to the kid, okay, we want to tempo during that period, but every year at the beginning during training camp, that's something we're going to show them some clip of what tempo is and what tempo is not. When we say we don't want the quarterback to be touched, we don't want a quarterback to be touched, and so what we show them clip, of good behaviors and sometimes not so good behaviors, but when they see it, usually they kind of learn it. There's something we've started maybe in 2019, and I think it's pretty good for the coordinators or the play calling and the play callers, is we script a 2nd and 7. We play 4th down football here, so we script a 2nd 7 and we play the 3rd down. So if it's 3rd and long, because defense stopped us on 2nd and 7, then the OC needs to make a 3rd and long call. And if we gain some yardage on offense, and then it's a 3rd and medium, 3rd and short. So it's good for the kids because they have to play a certain situation, but also for the play callers, it helps them getting organized right away on their call sheet, getting ready for the game. So that's something we started a couple of years back, and it's been good. It's been good to us.
I guess I can chime in. So great stuff, guys. I think we dabble in a little bit of what everyone was talking about. One thing I might add, like that we found success in, just, over the course of a season, teams typically find these lulls in the season where the routine, the monotony sort of gets to the players and even the coaches. And one thing we found success with is although we've got a nice plan for the week in terms of all the sessions we need to get in and everything I need to do in prep for the next game, but it is to break that typical kind of practice schedule. So what your typical Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday has been for 6 to 8 weeks in a row, that's been grinding on the players. And, as an ex-player, you show up on Wednesday and I know it's Wednesday and you're kind of bummed out, is just to splash in some breaks in that monotony and some breaks in that routine that still accomplishes your weekly goals. and gets you where you need to be for game day, but just breaks up that routine for the players, keeps it fresh. Maybe it's something fun but still productive. Maybe it's something really hard and nasty, but it's something that just keeps them off guard and keeps them going, because sometimes you can just tell when your team's running low on batteries, whether it's because you're on a big win streak or you're on a big losing streak, whatever it is. You've got to find ways to break up the team and break up that I guess mode and zone they get into, and that's been really helpful for us to, sometimes this first week of October or something like that, or after Thanksgiving or something along those lines, that you find a time to just splash some energy into the team and get them focused again.
Yeah, and I mean, I can pretty much piggyback off of everything everyone said, and a lot of us are doing the same things. And, for me coming in, and this has been my first year at Facey, and with the COVID and everything going on, it was a big challenge to find a way to keep all the kids engaged, right? Because, it's been 18 months that these kids haven't been doing really anything. And so we've just been trying to find ways to keep kids engaged. And I really challenged a lot of our assistant coaches to take their groups and, find ways to teach. And I found, a big thing that helped us on offense, especially was, and we're installing this new system is like pulling film from all these different places, and the kids get to understand, like, these schemes aren't the most challenging thing in the world, right? Like, we're going to be running the same things as, some of these CFL teams, some of these U Sport teams, and really get them understanding, why we're doing these things, and trying to get them mentally just, a little bit further. And then plus, we've been trying to focus a lot on leadership things and, things in the community, because there's lots of things going on, right? In the world, and really trying to keep those kids, up to date with all that stuff, because, really the goal for me as a high school coach is for everyone to have a good time and to, leave better than when they were, right? So we're really, really just trying to find ways to keep these kids engaged and keep getting better, right? So I think that's the biggest thing. I could reiterate everyone and just kind of talk about the same stuff, but that's been our biggest challenge. So.
Helps if I'm not muted, if the moderator doesn't mute himself. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll try and, even it out as who goes first and who goes last, because I know it's, honestly, the reason we got 6 great people, because I asked 6 guys and you guys all said yes. So I was like, great, I better ask. I need at least 4, I better ask enough people, but there's the you guys making the time made this, 6 people is a lot. So I understand, I won't make the same guy have to go at the end each time, for sure. Yeah, and I think that's like such a challenge right now, from a COVID standpoint. That's something like, I'm the head coach of a summer team here in Guelph. We play, typically we play over June and July. And this is our second year now of guys doing online stuff. And we were able last year to get out on the field and do some meaningful stuff and Skelly and things like that. But I know, like, Jason, I know we have a lot of the same, restrictions. We're very close geographically, and it's great to hear, Jordan, like, focusing on the community piece. That's something that, I might take even to my program now and, try and get something going there, because it is tough to, there's only so many. I can show another clip of Laurier running inside zone of our offensive line, but they're good. You know what I mean? Like, at this point, it's looking back on the field. So that was all great stuff, guys. I can't wait to go back and listen to those all individually and think about how I can take those things to my program. My second one, and this is another question where you can go a lot of different directions, and it could be something like at a micro level, like something really specific or more general, but you always talk about, our culture, and we want our culture to help, develop our players, and we want, our culture to take over when we're in tough situations, and when we're, in a game in the fourth quarter, our culture is going to matter. And I think you hear that a lot, but what you don't hear, or you don't hear as much, is the specific details that help coaches actually build that culture, right? And I think it's something that I think by the nature of it, if you're not improving your culture, it's getting worse, or at least that's kind of where I'm at in my journey of learning about this. Is it seems the great coaches that I know in terms of building programs and building culture in a program, they're constantly obsessed with improving it. So what's kind of one thing that you guys do in your programs, and it could be an element that is super important within your culture, or it could be like an activity or an action, something that you guys do, whether it's something you demand of your players or something you do as a coach, that, you think helps build that positive culture that's going to drive the behaviors that you want to see in the program?
Well, I'll jump in because I probably need to slide off after this. For us, there's a couple of key pillars. Number one is no excuses, right? And when I say that, I mean, it starts with me as much as anybody else, right? Because we generally deal in a world of volunteer coaches. And when you get that, a lot of people feel that they're able to come on their own terms and dictate how they want to volunteer. And we don't do that at our place. I mean, there's a lot of pieces in that area as far as not making excuses if you can't make it in terms of time available for preparation, and that kind of takes itself over to the kids. And it started really when I began the program, because how many of you have external circumstances in and around your program that you believe negatively impact your program? So the administrator, the superintendent, the principal, this person's not supportive, that person's not supportive, we don't have enough money, we don't have this. And so for me, I think right out of the gate, it became about absolutely no excuses and find a way to get to a point where the people around you can say yes. And, we were able to do that. I made every effort possible to build relationships with the right people in our administration, in our building, from the right counselors to the right people in the community, so that we could get the right amount of resources we needed around those kids. And I just find so many people want to make excuses about why it's not working in their situation. I remember early on, I had one of the guys that had previously been a basketball coach at the school, and he didn't want to coach basketball anymore, still a young guy. And he said to me, "Kids have changed." Real big blanket excuse. And I said, "Kids haven't changed." When I was in Ontario last doing a coaching seminar, and we were talking about program building, and one of the things I showed was a picture of Bear Bryant, right? And Bear Bryant, I had him in between Joe Namath and Ken Stabler. And you would have assumed that Bear Bryant in the 60s, nobody ever dared cross him. And it would be easy to say kids have changed because people now want to challenge you at every opportunity. Well, the truth is that those two particular quarterbacks challenged Bear Bryant, who in the state of Alabama is probably God, right? They challenged him all the time. Those guys smoked while they were, collegiate athletes. Like at halftime of games, they caroused. One, maybe both of them at one point were kicked off the program before they wound up coming back. Kids haven't changed. Kids simply want to be led, and they have to believe in the people that are leading them. So I think it comes down to us setting an example and creating a no excuse environment for our coaches, giving them the resources they need to succeed. The parents in and around your program. I mean, how many of you complain that you don't have enough volunteer help? Here's the one thing a coach can never delegate. Don't make an excuse here. You can never delegate it. So if you want parents to help, if you want people to support your program, you directly have to make that ask. And then once you do that, now you can build your resources to do other things. But start with no excuses and begin that no excuse with yourself. The kids will see it, your assistant coaches will see it, and everybody else will buy in at that point.
Thanks, Farhan. Appreciate you making the time. And I know you're probably heading out here now. So thanks. That's an awesome answer. Appreciate it.
Still 2 unleafs in case you care.
There you go. Go Buds. Go Buds. Awesome. Jordan, do you want to go next there? Because we put you at the back of the line last time.
For me, we're very fortunate, honestly. Our principal at Facey is actually longtime coach Barkley, who really built the program to begin with, and he took over 3 years ago, and he's honestly instilled such a great culture in the school that I would have been very stupid not to just piggyback off of a lot of the things that he was pushing, because he's a very athletics-driven principal. So we're very blessed for that. And I think the biggest thing for us was, bringing in the right staff and the right people, because, I've seen coaches, and I'm just going off my playing experiences, bring in people, and it's fire and ice. It's not going to work no matter, how bad you want it to. And they still, decide to bring people on just based on that. And I think, having coaches and volunteers that really speak the same language as you want is important, and kind of really believe in what you're saying as well. Because how can the kids, buy in if your coaches can't? So that's been a big focus on us with us, and it's been great. And then I think a big thing too is just that, I kind of pull from a lot of the coaches that I was with, and Coach Nil is a dear friend of mine, and I love that man, and he's in my eyes one of the best coaches in Canada, and his thing was just, never let anyone outwork you, and never let anyone just beat you because they wanted it more, right? So, we got to really hold the kids accountable, and that starts with me. So that's making sure I'm on time for everything. I'm doing everything in my dates and in the right times, and being organized, because if I'm not organized, how can the kids expect me to be? So that's a big driving force. And then to just building this culture of like working hard. Like it's not like working hard isn't no fun. Like it is. It's very rewarding in the end. And I think kids just really want to show up and just show up to games and play and that's it. But at least in our league, you can't do that, right? Because there's a team in Edmonton that's just going to beat you up at the end of the year, right? So it's really installing this work ethic with these kids, and I'm so excited to get going, and hopefully it's sooner than later. As I'm sure everyone else is.
Can go next then. For us, we involve our kids with we talked. Farhan talked about the pillars of his team and stuff. That we every springtime we have a team meeting with about 15 to 20 leaders of our team, mostly seniors, but I involve juniors as well in that meetings, and we kind of define again every year what's the team mission, the team goals, what will be our team's pillars for the following year. And for year to year, to be honest, it doesn't change that much, but it's always good to have those kind of conversation with your leaders. So every spring, that's something that we do. Not allowing any negativity, I don't know if you watch that guy on YouTube, Joko Willick. I don't know if you Extreme Ownership, if you read his book and stuff like that, but there's a short clip. It's called Good. If you have a chance to watch it, it's awesome. And it's so every time there's adversity, okay, I mean, always try to find the positivity and be a solution finder. That's something that we try to we want to give them life lesson. That's super important. Whenever there's adversity, let's try to find the positive of it, and let's find solution. And ultimately, when you're a veteran or are in charge of the culture, this is a good sign. For example, like whenever we do sprints and stuff, like we ask our kids to get their feet behind the white line. It's not on the white line, you're behind the white line, for example. So if just details like that, when we do sprints or conditioning, we don't want any kids having either hands on their heads or hands on their hips. Like we don't want to show any sign of weakness and stuff like that. That's something I got from my playing time at Laval University, and so all those little details, and at the end, ultimately, the veteran are taking over or taking care of it, and they're calling out the younger kids, hey, make sure you're behind the white line and stuff. So that's whenever your leaders are taking care of the culture, I guess that's you're going in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the hardest things I've found. Again, like my experience as a head coach is with the summer football programs. We have our guys for such a short period of time, but it's amazing to see. Like we had one season, 2016, we won the provincial championship, and we were super talented. There's already been like one of our tackles on that team is a CFL draft prospect, Gordon Lamson, all Canadian, bunch of guys, really really great players. And it was interesting because it was my first year as the head coach, and we recruited much more than we had in the past. So we actually had a really different team than ever before. And I think it helped us because a lot of guys, like you mentioned, the whole, like the traditional hierarchy in the team was kind of disrupted because some of our best players were, coming from other places. And we had guys that, maybe had been captains before in the organization that were now fighting for a starting spot. And we really went from, I kind of looked at it, and I was a super young head coach at the time, Jordan, the similar situation what you're in, and I remember thinking, if I bring this energy and bring this culture, it's going to make it happen. And then I realized about 4 or 5 weeks in, I'm like, if I don't have if all these players aren't, once they start policing it, it was like exponential. It was like we went from having not all these problems to no problems. But when I stopped trying to be the enforcer of it and I started empowering players to do that, I think that was like one of the first really big lessons in my career, and I'm glad I learned it, because I didn't, that team was so good. I'm glad I didn't screw it up. Yeah, that's a great point. Anybody have anything else to add there on that question?
Jackson, when I read that question, positive culture, a couple things came to my mind. One was about football and the program, and then one was, kind of like what Jordan alluded to about community life and being that great person and using football as a metaphor for life. And I try to do that every day, regardless if it's just for the football team and winning championships and winning games, but more about metaphors of life. For me, when it comes to the football side of things, obviously you have to have an administration. You guys have mentioned it, who believes in the program and is going to support you, right? Without that, nothing's going to happen for you. And then, of course, your off-season work, your skill development sessions, all those are in place and well known in advance. Alumni Relations for us, a school that's been around since 1899. It's been an important part of things that I've been really involved in. And coaches in the past have started such a great tradition and legacy here at this school. And so I just piggyback off of what's already been here and really fine-tune that alumni relations, bringing them on campus, working with our kids, telling them life stories about their journeys. And then social media. And, in this COVID year, more than anything, I've really turned my attention to how can I help my kids out via social media, give them a positive experience, bringing U sport coaches and college coaches to them via Zoom meetings. We've had probably now almost a dozen U sport coaches present to our players, which has been really good. And then, that other part, that positive culture and metaphor for life is, teaching them to be excellent at everything that they do. I read a book by Lou Holtz, and these three things, you guys probably read it or know about it, really resonated with me. And that's kind of, being excellent in everything you do, right? Doing what's right? Everything you do, when you walk in the hallways, are you the guy that's just going to walk right by a piece of garbage? Are you going to be the guy that, picks that up and throws it out, right? How's character defined? Those kind of things I try to teach them every day. And then, showing people you care, right? You're going to ask a teammate, can I trust you, right? So they have to believe in each other, trust each other, and believe in us as coaches. One thing I firmly believe is being transparent. And I think that's going to help your program. That's going to help keeping the guys in your program, right? We have 40 plus guys in our program, and we have very few, maybe one that has ever played both ways. And so I've got to be real clear with everyone that may not be a starter, say, hey, this is going to be your role. And right from the start, and if it changes midweek and competition makes that happen, that's great. And then if the starter loses that job, he's going to know. It won't be a surprise come game day. And I think that's an important thing for all of our young players, so that they stay involved in the game, they understand the process, and they enjoy the whole ride for sure.
I guess I can chime in. So I think one thing that dawned on me when you asked that question was that, for us, it's about the program. It's not about necessarily the players or the coaches or the parents or even that specific team of that year. Every decision that we make is about what makes our program better. And that's been one thing that's been really successful for us, because, sometimes you're making tough decisions that might hurt a player or that might hurt your team for that given year. But everything we do is about making our program better as a whole. And that means the 10, 15, 20 years before us and the 10 or 15, 20 years after us, it's a brand that we're creating within our community. And so that kids that are coming up now, brothers and younger brothers that are coming up, friends of families, they understand the way we do things and the decisions we make. Whether it's about accountability or whether it's about, leadership and community work and all this elements that go into a good high school football program. But for us, really, every decision we make is going to be about the program as a whole and what makes that program better. And sometimes I think teams, I can speak when I see, on the field or talking with other coaches, is a lot of the decisions that are made are being made for that current year. So if something happens and maybe as a coach, you make a decision that goes against some of the principles that you're trying to teach these players because, I don't know, it's a playoff game or it's a big game, or, you can't do this because he's this player. And that stuff happens all the time, and I see it. And ultimately, I think that's just very short-sighted. And I think any program that has a good history, I would say, of winning, they've probably made those decisions, and it's probably cost them at some point. But the long game is where, I think people need to head a little bit more. So if you're starting a new program, or you're in the middle of taking one over, or you've taken one over from some guy that built one up, you have to keep that brand in mind of what you're preaching to your players and to especially the external people, because whatever we tell our players, that player is going to tell his little brother, and that player is going to tell his friend, and that gets kind of embedded throughout the community. So you need to know when a 14-year or 15-year-old kid shows up through your doors to try out in day one, that they understand the expectations, and that can happen far better, through word of mouth and through experiential learning than it does with some PowerPoint that I present them in week one, because ultimately those, it's a culture, and that's what we're talking about. And culture is not built in a year. Culture for me is built over time. And so it's an investment in yourself and your team. And, if you're building something, if you're willing to bite the bullet and swallow your pride a little bit, I think you get the long-term payoffs for sure. We have, especially.
Yeah, and I think that's, so it's one of the things that sounds like so simple to agree to. And then you as a coach, you have so many moments where you actually have to check in and make those decisions. It's so easy, especially in high school football, when there's so much you don't control, right from your roster, through your roster's work schedule, through, the not having, well, I mean, in some cases you do have access to your kids all year, but they're in all likelihood, right? There's long portions of the year that football is not their number one, priority, right? Just realistically, most high school students, that would be true. It's definitely a challenge. Was there any other points anyone wanted to get in on the question about developing a positive culture?
Yeah, I'd like to share what we do at Assumption, Jackson, if I could.
Yep, for sure.
Just what the other coaches mentioned there, all of that. I think we all do kind of different chunks and components of that in our own way with our own programs there. But one thing I found when I took over as our senior football head coach, I wanted to make it about relationships. And I know that's a very generic term, very broad term, but for me, the relationships that our players have with each other, the relationships our players have with the school, and the relationship us as coaches have with our players. Player to player, be a good teammate, teach them about being a good human being, make that connection and bond together as players on the same team. Player to the school relationship, be a good leader in that school, be the role model that we all want to see our players be walking through the halls. Coach mentioned, are you the guy that stops and picks up the garbage, or are you the guy that walks by it, right? That type of stuff. Don't be a detriment to your school community. And then the coach to player part, that's probably for us the most important one. If we don't have that relationship built and the ability to connect with those players, anything else that comes after that's not going to work. The X's and O's aren't going to work. The commitment's not going to work. The buy-in to any kind of culture, program, mantra that you have isn't going to work. If they don't believe that you have a connection and you connect with them as a person, for me, I don't think there's going to be anything else that can follow that. So I really push that on our players. I push that on our assistant coaches. And I have a fantastic group of assistant coaches with me currently, and they're all about the relationship. The positional coaches make that connection and bond with their guys. The OC and DC make that connection and bond with their guys. So it's been really successful for us. One other thing I added to our program in 2018 was, and many of you that coach in high school football, you probably have, junior team is one set of coaches, one area of the field, senior team is the other set of coaches in the other area. In 2018, I kind of brought a little bit of that together. We start now, so from 2018 on and in 2019, we start our practices with the junior and senior teams combined. So they do a combined warm-up and stretch, dynamic warm-up together. They do some combined conditioning, and then they roll right into some combined indie drills with, junior and senior positional coaches running their indie drills. Obviously, we're not having big, seniors banging on grade 9 youngster in that, but we combine them together in the same indie periods. And I found that it's been beneficial because it allows my senior guys to step up and show leadership, brings the leaders to the top. It allows them to show a little bit of mentorship. a grade 12, grade 11, being able to kind of mentor a grade 9 who's maybe new to the game, maybe new to the high school, and create that bond that they can then grow together through the program, right? So I found that in 2018, it was a little bit apprehensive because it was new for our program and never did that before. It was always junior went one way, senior went the other way. But in 2019, continuing that, our guys kind of really bought into it. And I could see it wasn't, we started out where all the juniors were together on one side of the warm-up, all the seniors were together on the other side of the warm-up. And then as we grew through the season, they were all intermixed. It could be junior, senior, junior, senior. They were all in and all interacting together and just became one great big team run for our program. So I found that that's been pretty beneficial for us in building a positive culture for our program as well.
No, for sure. And it's interesting. Like, I'm from Guelph originally, and we didn't have junior and senior football. So I found our high school team was super close because, a lot of guys, you don't have junior and senior. Like, I knew guys' brothers, and, it's not that, you obviously have your group that you move up through with, that you're obviously close with your graduating class and the guys that are kind of 1 year below and 1 year above. But it's funny now. It's like some of my best coaching connections are guys that were either, a couple years older than me or even a couple years younger than me that are now getting into it. That's I think something. I think you don't lose the camaraderie, obviously, but and there's huge benefits to having junior football. I would have played a few more snaps had we had a junior team for sure. It's interesting. I think, you have that opportunity to, like, again, coming back to your point, Coach, was the creating opportunities for the players to really be in charge of that culture. And, it almost gives them a chance to not practice being a leader on the younger guys, but you're probably a little more comfortable stepping out of your comfort zone and saying to a grade 9, hey, like you said, Coach, get your feet across the line. Right. And then the more you do that, the more likely you are to probably point that out to, one of your buddies who's maybe your age or close to, and it's the accountability, like the difference between calling somebody out to call somebody out and keeping somebody accountable. I think people think, there's a lot there. Really, I mean, it's just if your team wants to be good, they're accountable. Right. So, someone missing an opportunity to help your team, have that accountability is, I think, I know that can be tense in terms of players, but I mean, if those players have the right priorities, that's the type of team that we all want to have and that all players should want to play on. So those are awesome points, guys. If anything comes up, feel free to, come back to it, but we are going to go to some questions from the chat here, and there's some good ones. So guys, if you have more questions, throw them in the chat. I'm going to get to some of these as we go through here. Some of them are kind of similar. So I'll kind of get different questions up first, and then maybe we'll go back to some of them. And the other thing I was going to mention is, if you like the video, it helps more people see it. So it's not like it's making us any money, but it just helps more people find it. We're more likely to be found by people if you like the video. So if you are watching, you haven't liked it yet, throw a like on it. If you haven't subscribed, help us out by subscribing. But now that I got the ad read over there. So a great question, and it's about motivating players. And I've heard like different coaches, very different opinions on this. And I think obviously the level of football you're playing, it depends on how much you're going to deal with this. But, if you're looking at a player that you think has some potential, that you would say their biggest issue is motivation, right? How do you go about, I guess it's different if they don't have a passion for the game, then maybe, their potential doesn't matter. If they're not interested in doing it, then that's their right to have. But, if you have a player that says, hey, I want to achieve these goals, I want to play youth sport football or NCAA football, but motivation to you is kind of the thing getting in their way. How do you go about, helping maybe spark that fire in a player? I've heard coaches say, well, we don't coach motivation, we recruit it. And I'm like, okay, that's great, but that doesn't really help. And if you're a high school coach, great, we don't recruit. So we, and I've heard other guys say, no, like, coach was talking about setting an example for your players. Like, you're in a situation where as a high school coach, probably 2/3 of your roster doesn't have elite habits. Even if you're on the best team, you got to teach those habits. So how do you guys go about, trying to motivate players, I guess is the short way to ask the question. And again, feel free to jump in on it. It doesn't need to be a super long answer. Sure, Jordan.
Yeah, I can jump on that. I think for us, the biggest part was taking our older guys, right, and having them, really monitor that. And I think, Coach Naggy said that, having the older guys really, you know, for me, the biggest motivation I always found when I was playing, and I was the worst in the gym. Like, I hated it. It was awful. It just was not my favorite thing. But what motivated me was my teammates, right? And wanting to, bring the best out of myself so I can, take us to the next level, right? Because it takes all of us. So I think that's been a big focus of us, even with our workouts right now, because, I can't be there, right? Because the school and everything going on, and I'm not a teacher at the school, so I can't be there motivating these kids, right? So we've been putting a lot on our older guys that want to work hard. Our program's kind of, it's been a big powerhouse in Alberta, and it's kind of tanked in the last 5 years, and we're trying to build it back up. So it's really, it really starts with those grade 12 guys, and if they're not motivated, then how is the grade 9 kid with all this potential going to be motivated, right? And I think if the grade 9 kid shows up to, for us, because we go grade 10, 11, and 12, if the grade 9 kid comes to spring camp, and the senior kid's going, hey, you got a lot of skill, you got a lot of talent, and this is, what I want to, take what I've learned and put it onto you. It's more of the same message just getting pushed to them. And I think that's, for me, I think it's a great way to get the best out of your players, and especially those unmotivated guys, because it's hard. You see a kid with a bunch of potential, and he just, doesn't want to finish the rep, doesn't want to do all the little things to make himself so much better. And in the end, like you said, if he doesn't have that love for football, he just is never going to do it. So I think that's identifying that first, and, being really blunt. Like, sometimes, I had a kid, we started spring sessions, crazy COVID sessions right now, where we can get 10 guys on the field, and we got kids who have been working hard in the gym and stuff. And I just said, why do you want to be here? Right? Why? Like, if you don't want to be here, and then you're not going to use all your potential, then what's the point? Right? And sometimes, then the light bulb flips on, right? And then the kids, now he hasn't been a problem for a week, and we'll see if it lasts. And some of these kids, they put on good for a couple of weeks, and then they go back to their old ways. So it's just staying on top of them. And I think building that, honestly, in your culture too, right? A culture of working hard and wanting to be at that next level. So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
For sure. Anyone else want to touch on that one? And don't feel like you all have to, like, as these questions come in, if you feel like you got something great, awesome. If you want to pass and wait for the next question, that's great too.
I'll chime in for a sec. I coach with a guy named Mike Tanner, who's been coaching for 50 years. He's co-head coach with me, but I think I've always been kind of more of a sink or swim type of approach to some of these players that you come across sometimes. And one thing that I've just took from him, that I've seen him do over and over again, is just when he's addressing the team as a collective, is calling those guys out individually for good things and for bad things. I'm not saying this is a solution to every kid, but as a whole, typically kids will respond fairly well if they're being called out in front of their peers. And you can say it's a little insensitive sometimes or whatever, but I think truth matters. I think accountability matters. I think their teammates need to know where the coaches stand on certain players, because those players certainly see it on how those other players are acting. And if they're not in a position, whether it's because he's some stud and he's huge and he's intimidating and they don't want to say anything, then so be it. But I find coaches who can effectively call players out for the good and the bad, that garners everybody else. So I would say that's just a tip. It's certainly not a solution.
For sure. Anybody else want to weigh in on that one?
Just to add something with motivation. In my case, I get to recruit some kids, so it's mainly the academic side. Sometimes they lack some the motivation with it. So sometimes if they're good athletes, present them for future opportunities, whether it's youth sports football or NCAA. So that helps certainly. We talked about small term or short term goals. Like 1 week at a time. So if with academic, I get a kid and we go over his weekly plan and what are you going to do today and tomorrow, and at the end of the week I meet the kid again. So like short-term plans, and go week by week. Like a term in Cegep is 15 weeks. So we divide it up in a small chunk, and then hopefully we get it done in 15 weeks. But that helps.
Yeah, and that was something like I spent a little time at Laurier when I was doing some academic work with them as well, and I found that like you talk about the weekly plan, that's something, and I preach to our high school guys, and when I had a bunch of university coaches come talk to our high school players a couple weeks ago now, but we had 8 weeks of university coaches come in, and every single time they talked about, okay, you gotta, academically, you got to plan your week. I would just stop them and be like, see, there's another person. You don't have to hear it from me. That's, our 7th U Sport head coach that just said that to you. So when I bug you about that in September, right. And I think that's critical. Like the weekly academic stuff. I think a lot of these guys, if they've struggled in school, and I'm a teacher as well, that's my day job. But, when kids have this built up frustration with school, they really don't think that, they stop believing their choices matter, and then they make choices that shock us, right? And you're like, how could you not start that essay? And they some of it actually stems from they don't believe their choices matter. They think that some of them think they'll be able to pull it out at the very last minute. Some of them think that they're going to struggle no matter what. They're really afraid that they're going to do all the things that you ask them to do, and they're still going to fail, because that's been, they might be a grade 11 student and they've had 10 years of hating school. And now you're telling them school's the key to their football future. And I think breaking it down, like you talk about, coach, you got a 15-week course in Cegep. Can you be successful in this 1-week plan? Like in these next 7 days, you got to do A, B, C, and D. If you do that, we're going to deem that as successful, and that's going to give you a chance. I think that, if you can find a way to communicate that to players and students, I think that's critical, because a lot of them, they make decisions and you're like, how, like you're throwing these opportunities away. And a lot of times they're making those decisions purely off the thought, whether it's conscious or not, that their decision isn't actually going to matter, that they're going to struggle either way. So that's a huge point. If anyone has anything else on that, happy to hear it. There's a couple great questions in here about engaging alumni, which I think could be great to hear different perspectives from across the country. So there's 2 questions. One from Chaz Douglas, speaking of my former high school teammates, actually, offensive coordinator at Centennial High School, now at the rival high school, but that's okay. So he was asking about, have you ever started a booster club for your high school football program? If so, what advice would you have on making that successful? And then Zach Scotto asked strategies or ideas around engaging alumni to help build your program. I guess those 2 kind of things go hand in hand. So I thought I'd ask them both at once there. Has anyone done that? Like, does any of you guys' programs have like a Friends of Football or alumni group there? Sure. I see a couple guys nodding their head. Feel free. Anyone can hop in and take that first.
I can chime in on that there. Just the booster club or the Friends of Football thing, that's actually something that I'm actively working on right now. So I'm interested to hear what other people have to say about that, so we can steal some ideas. But as far as engaging alumni, I actually have on my 11 guys I coach with, 7 of them are alumni from the high school. So some of them that have gone, beyond football, they played at U Sports level, come back to the area. And I'm lucky enough to have them on my coaching staff. And I find that it helps with engaging the other alumni that they played with whenever their segment was in high school and that. And kind of brings that connection back, because I've had a bunch of other alumni that maybe don't have time to coach, but have come out and run some drills for us 1 day or 2 days a little bit. And it's kind of brought them back to Assumption football a bit for us. So I found that having alumni coaches, and I know that's not always an opportunity for everyone, but it's been good for us. And I honestly, the social media aspect, regardless of the age of your alumni, or from the most part, they're all going to have some sort of social media. Whether it's the younger ones with Instagram and Twitter, or even the older ones through Facebook and stuff. So I've really worked hard at trying to engage a lot of our alumni. Our school has an alumni for the whole school, alumni Facebook page. I've gotten a lot of feedback from football alumni on that with some of my posts, and just reaching out and making the connections with the former players. And the way I tell the kids, and when I introduce new players to their coaches every year, like, these, and I point to my coaches, these coaches here, they were wearing cleats on this very same field that you're on right now. They know what Assumption football is about. They've been here. Their sweat is in the ground that you're walking on, right? So I find that gives a lot of buy-in for current players and understanding, okay, these guys, they're one of us. So they know what this is about, right? And just the social media engagement with some of the other alumni, I found it's been nice to have some social media conversations with alumni from 15 years ago who they only remember our program as a junior program when we first started, or a varsity program the first couple of years after that, and only remember losing every game, right? So it's kind of been nice to update them on where our program stands now, and making that connection with them over social media has been quite successful for us.
Awesome. Anyone else want to hop on that question?
Yeah. With us at St. Andrews, the alumni runs rampant over the years, which has been great. And this is only my second year here, but last year I started a Friends of Football Booster newsletter. I started with a newsletter, which was really good. Took really well. I received emails from guys that were graduates in the 50s, and so it was incredible to get that kind of a reception back about the newsletter. And so now I'm going to continue that quarterly, kind of keep them up to speed with what's going on with some of our kids who are pursuing the next level, what they're doing in their lives academically as well. And then one thing I've added with the social media piece was a throwback Thursdays for our guys and for the history of our alumni who have gone on to the next level. And the list is quite extensive. So I know I've got lots of time to get through everybody, so which is real good. And some who've gone on to play professionally as well. And so I've done that, and that's kind of, you start tagging people, and it's kind of really heightened our program in that sense as well with our alumni. And that's really, the alumni love seeing that kind of stuff. And I've heard, and I've gotten some amazing feedback from all of them. And I think I may have mentioned it earlier, but due to the CFL lockout, a number of our alumni in the CFL, following proper protocol this fall, we were fortunate enough here at St. Andrews, we were in-person learning, and we practiced 5 days a week following the guidelines by Football Canada. So, we had masks, we had them on campus, and we did some guest coaching for us, Peter Godber and Fraser Sopek, some great guys that were here not too long ago. So we got them back on campus, and they really enjoyed their time, and the kids really enjoyed having them there.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I just, in my limited experience with it, like you said, Coach Naggy and Coach Leo, like when people actually come, when you get people to come back to practice, it's super meaningful. I think not just for your current players, but, if you send someone an email, that's one thing that'll trigger some nostalgia or whatever. But if you actually get them, back on campus, even if it's for 30 minutes of a practice one day, when you're setting up your golf tournament or whatever it is, like whatever you're looking to get out of that alumni later on, obviously, they'll be much more receptive to it. Anyone else have any strategies or tips there?
One tip I would say, there's a whole business and industry behind engaging with alumni and fund development. And I would encourage anybody just to, within your own city, just reach out to someone in that industry and pick their brain a little bit. It's an art in many ways. I think there's ways to engage with alumni just for them to show up at your games and your events and your practices. And there's a way for them to write one big check a year, or there's a way to have them show up at an auction that you run. And I think every alumni will have a different take on what they'd like to do to contribute. And that's not always financial, but in many cases, and probably what a lot of high school programs are struggling with, is to get some extra funding through the door. So, I would certainly say to take a professional approach to it and talk with some people about, how you can build that a business essentially is what you're doing. So, it's been a big success for us. We have a big marquee event every year. It's a big auction that we run around one of our it's the same date every single year. It's the same Friday night, and we try to bring as many local people in. We have an annual kind of mail out campaign that, probably should be going into the 21st century now with more email, but it's still running on direct mail, and it's great. And our alumni, if they're either getting an FYI about the season ahead and big dates, or they're also going to maybe contribute something financially to the program that's within, what they can afford. So for us, it's really just it's a big picture look at it. And, as well, I would encourage people to reach out and And, you know, it's a tough thing to do as a high school football coach in the middle of the season when you've got a million other things to worry about. But that's also the best time you could probably raise some money for your program. So I'm happy to share any tips that we have that we've been successful with. But, you know, we don't take a dime from the school. We're entirely run independently through our alumni, and that's how we're able to function. But it's important, and it's important to know kind of who's the players that, or the people that, you know, might want to contribute a little bit more for those bigger items every couple of years, or the ones that just want to write an annual check that might be small, but those add up with big numbers. So that would be my tip. I mean, you know, I think just building consistency around it, and so that people know every year or every month or whatever it is that there's a way that they can contribute, and then responding to what they want in return, if there is anything. You know, maybe it's sending them a T-shirt. Maybe it's giving them free tickets to all your home games, whatever it is. I mean, find a way to keep that relationship and say thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, my partner's in university fundraising, and I just got a text being like, that guy knows what he's talking about. Good stuff. So big, the Yonkers House approves of that message for sure. I think that's one of the things I think, like, we all think about, like you said, you know, Coach, about being someone that creates solutions, right? Like that I think it's easy to think about what you don't have. You flick on Instagram and you see what IMG's got going on down there, and it's like, yeah, cool. That it would probably, all our lives would be easier if we had that. But like, what solution can you find to, you know, fix one problem you have, you know, first, and go from there? Because I think there's, you know, the kids benefit. Like, I mean, again, Jason, like, I'm around Jason's program. I recruit that area. We've recruited guys from Assumption to both Laurier and guys that played on my summer team. You know, like you see, like, high school football is such a beneficial product, or Cegep football or summer league football, for these kids who are, you know, whether it's 13, 14, 15 as the young guys, or guys who are getting close to going to the university level. And if every program, I'm glad I got that question, because if every program thought as much, you know, about how they could build their program, like literally financially, from those relationships as they do about, are we going to run this RPO or that RPO, or 3 down front, 4 down front, you know, there might be more possibilities out there that could help kids. So that was a great question. Anyone else have anything they want to add on that?
I can kind of talk about that. So we've had our foundation and our parents group for a while, and you know, Tanner, who's the co-head coach and teacher at the school, you know, the funniest thing, because I asked him the same thing. I said, what are we doing, you know, for fundraising? I have all these ideas, and he's like, great. He's like, honestly, I don't deal with it because legally he's not allowed to, because of him teaching and it's foundation, all this stuff. And he said, but I just empower our parents. And I mean, we get 75 kids a year between our junior and senior team. So every year we have, you know, he's like, we have the same meeting, and we say, who wants to step up? And he's like, and you'd be surprised how many people, right? And using them as a resource too. I know, you know, I went to a different high school in the same city, and we had the same thing, a booster club, and we wanted to redo our locker room, and all they did was reach out to the parents, and boom, all done like that, right? And because they care, right? And they want their kids to enjoy the experience, and so you got to use them as a resource. That's a big thing. And, you know, and we've been lucky. We've had parents come back, and we, like, our main board of our foundation is like people who don't even have kids involved in the program anymore, and all they're doing is trying to find ways to make money. And it makes my job a lot easier because I don't have to worry about that, and I still do and still try to help. But you know, you really just empower your parents, because they want their kids to have just as good as an experience as anyone else does. So yeah,
no, that's a great point. Again, just cut me off if anyone else wants to add anything in there. There's a couple other really good questions I want to make sure that we get to, and thanks, guys. We're over the time, so if anybody's got to go, feel free. You know, I appreciate you guys giving the time. I know depending on where you're at in the country, it's different time of day. Coach Dyer, you're the one up the latest right now. Thank you for that. But if anyone's got to go, totally understand. A couple more questions I'll throw it here to anyone who can stick around. But those were great ones, and have me thinking a lot about what I can do with my program. How do you go about coaching your coaches? Like, how do you go about that process? That's obviously a big question. And whether that's like staff development, you know, maybe, or purely, hey, like, we're going to run this concept and it's new to a coach on your staff. How do you go about, you know, kind of teaching the coaches that you're with, and empowering those coaches to then deliver that knowledge to the players? That's a tough one. That has me thinking personally about our own practices for sure.
Well, if I could jump in, Jackson, we were very fortunate here as well. We've I think Coach Jason may have said, or someone else did, but we've got 7, on our varsity staff and 7 on our JV staff, which is phenomenal. And guys that have, incredible amount of experiences at the youth sports and professional level. So we kind of utilize those guys, and we have, our own type of coaches clinics here. We get a lot of PD time, which is awesome here. So we incorporate some of that, as well. Like, for example, even 2 weeks ago, Lori hosted a great Zoom coaches clinic, and we had four coaches or so in a room, with the Zooms on, and we had a whiteboard, and, it was a great PD for us right after, or in between during breaks and stuff like that. So we definitely utilize the time. Most of our staff, out of those 14, 10 of them are faculty members. So obviously you can see the investment by the school as well with regards to coaching as well. So, but yeah, we usually will just take, guys with probably the most experience at many different levels and coach and find times to make sure that we work together with our coaches. The big thing, I think, is terminology for kids, right? So if we can get on the same terminology right across the board, even with our JV program, not necessarily, I'm not one, although I direct the program here, I'm not one to tell our JV head coach, this is what you have to run. I just talk about terminology so that when the kids come up, they're familiar with the terminology. I want to empower the coaches. You mentioned that, Jackson. It's important that we empower and allow them to use their creative minds offensively or defensively. And gosh, sometimes you learn some things from your junior staff. You're like, wow, that worked. You're watching a game, you asked them about that. But I think the terminologies are the key, and then finding time for sure. Over the summer, our plan is to get together at one of the cottages too of our JV head coach, if we can do that via COVID, with the situation, and have a PD day as well too. So that's what we're trying to do here.
Awesome. Anybody else?
Something we did this winter with COVID is every other Thursday night, basically coaches in Quebec, there's a curfew at 8:30 here. So since I guess January, so 8:30 we had a coaches meeting on Zoom, with some beverages, and we're whether it's the all 24 question that they were showing some formations and stuff. So just talking balls, stuff that some coaches I've seen on during clinics. So we were just sharing ideas and talking balls for an hour. So every other Thursday through the winter. So that was something positive for us during COVID.
Anybody else have anything they want to add there? There's a lot of good questions. We won't get to them all, unfortunately, but anyone want to add to that there about coaching on your staff?
I think empowering them is huge, especially in the film room as well. Like, we have a big staff for, our high school is 10, 11, 12, but we've got 14, 15 on staff every year. So when we break up in film room every week, it's by position, and it's really important for those coaches to lead those film sessions in their position groups. I find it empowers them to not only teach the game, but also prepare the kids for what's coming at their position groups. And as long as you're meeting with them and everyone's aware of the lessons that need to be learned and the prep that needs to be done, I think it builds on each other over the course of the season, and you'll get a little bit more buy-in from the players as well, from those positional coaches. So, and I would just say, let coaches make mistakes, and that's if you're building a program, you're going to have coaches that have a variety of experience coming in and out. And I certainly remember my first day coaching after playing, and I wouldn't say I was well equipped or well trained to start, and I certainly learned a lot of lessons. And I think just not getting on guys because there might be one or two things that you want to change, just finding the opportunities to reinforce, what are those key messages that you're doing as an OC or as a head coach or a DC, and then doing it privately, because you certainly don't want to kind of correct another coach in front of players. I would say that would be a no-no for sure.
Yeah, I think that's something. I was super fortunate as a young coach. Like, my university career, ended 2 years in because of injuries, and Coach Baltz let me hop on as a coach. I often think back to that now, still as very much a young coach, but at least I've had some years and doubled up by doing the Laurier season, and then the summer season. I've packed about as much football as I could in the last 10 years. And I think just remembering back to like, there's some things that I do now that I look back on, man, like I used to do this or try and do this way, and I think about how much I wish I'd changed that. And, just empowering coaches, I think, is a huge point. And I think you're going to get more out of them. Like, you're looking for those guys, like Farhan said, to have really meaningful roles in your program. Like, you want them to be filling meaningful roles. You have to give them a meaningful role to fill, for sure. This seems like a really good question to end off on. So we've all missed, maybe Coach Dyer hasn't, and we'll try not to hate him for it, but we've all missed like a full year, right, of football now or more. How is that going to impact you and your program when you get back to the field? What will you do differently? And I'm talking about when we get back to real, we're preparing for a full season, hopefully the fall, whenever that happens, try and keep it positive. Whenever that happens, what will you do differently with your program than maybe you would do every other year the rest of your career, because kids are coming off, 12, 16, 18 months, hopefully no more than that, but 18 months of whether it's inactivity or at least, it's been a while since anybody's been in an inside run. What are you going to do differently, as a head coach in your program? Do you want to take that one, Jason?
Yeah, and it's funny that this was a question there too, because my coaches and I were just talking about this the other day. Essentially for our program, like usually as we all do, you have, you get the kids that come from grade 11 to senior, then they graduate up to 12, and then you get a chunk that stay for that fifth year, that old grade 13. Going down rosters the other day for what we may potentially have in the fall, if we have football, fingers crossed. It's going to be a completely brand new senior team that we're going to have. I may have 4 or 5 guys that are sticking around for a fifth year, but essentially brand new teams. Our junior team, completely brand new, right? Those kids have all moved on through into senior ages. So we talked about it as a staff about, we're going to obviously have to get back to some fundamentals, some basics, right? Some of these kids, yes, they may be football kids who have played as they've grown up, but they obviously haven't played in our system we run at senior. So getting back to simplifying it, back to some fundamentals. We know there's going to have to be, some added time for learning to go on, some, simplification of schemes for these kids to be able to grasp it. For us in our league, the senior game is much faster, but bigger, faster, stronger than our junior league. And these kids wouldn't have had the time to adjust to that, right? We're going to have kids that, maybe playing their first downs of senior football as a grade 12, right? So they haven't had that growth time that comes with being part of the program as a grade 11. So a big thing for us is going to be back to fundamentals, back to simplification of what we do, and allowing, our league's going to allow us a little more prep time. We get a certain number of days of practice outside of the season, and they've already said they're going to allow us some more prep time, a few more days added to that, so that we can build what we haven't had for a year and a half.
Anybody want to hop on that one next?
I mean, I would echo that for sure. I can tell you, we didn't play in the fall, but about a week ago, we found out we were going to have some sort of a spring season, and that starts in 2 weeks. So our coaches weren't, no one was really prepared. Very good news, but it was a bit of a scramble for sure, and we're going through that right now. Very fortunate to be going through it, but I mean, we're changing the game. We're going from 12-man to 10-man just from a numbers restriction. So, or whether it's our coaches or whoever, we're scrambling right now just to kind of, we've started practicing and teaching the game, as you said, going back to fundamentals. But one thing I think we're going to try to do is just take a step back and just curb our expectations about everything we're trying to execute, and completely, not completely start from scratch, but expect that the very basic fundamental skills and understanding of the game are going to be scaled back a bit. And I can't speak for, the Ontario and Quebec and, at West, but I expect the quality of play to probably be down in our league, generally speaking, as a collective. And so what are we going to do as a team in that environment, and what does that mean from teaching the kids for future years, and what does that mean to try and get some wins this year? And I think really that's going to be really building it up, and hope that come playoff time, we've reached some sort of pinnacle of what we can be. But I would echo the fundamentals and really just, maybe going and throwing out my general week one kind of install and rethinking about how that works and what that's going to look like.
Okay, great. And I'm assuming you guys, everyone else, if you want to add anything, jump in here. But I'm sure that it's pretty common across the board that we're going to have to go from some people have been able to have like 10 people in groups, like you said, Jordan, to maybe periods of practice and then periods of inactivity and back and forth, and that's going to be a huge challenge. But hopefully, and it was funny when I started this a year ago, or just about a year that I've been doing this. It was kind of I'm a teacher. So when schools got shut down, obviously I was home a lot more than I'm used to. And it was kind of a project to help really just get connected with other people and try and keep learning through it. And, I'm glad that I didn't know it was going to be 2 years till our next, 2 years maybe, but a year and a half at least till our next game here in Ontario. Cause I don't know if I would have had the stamina to try and do it. But to all the coaches that are watching this and to you guys that have hopped on here, thanks so much for being a part of this and continuing to try and improve what I think is one of the great things we have in school communities, and that's athletics. And whether that's the high school level, Cegep level, or summer football league level, some of our guests were today. It's not always easy in Canada because there's going to be very little financial gain for you as a coach to continue to improve, right? I'm not going to get hired as a phys ed teacher because we won 8 games instead of 6 games. Right. And, so I'm always, blown away by, how engaged and how excited a lot of coaches in the Canadian high school game, are still to learn because they recognize the value of what it brings to not just their players individually, but their community, whether it's at their high school or Cegep or, in their community, like what I get to do in summer football. So thanks very much, guys, for being on here, and, all the best. Hopefully everyone stays healthy, and good luck next coming weeks. 10-man football, Coach Dyer. Let us know what that looks like. That's sounding interesting. The X's and O's will be fun for sure. But thanks so much, guys, and everybody.
Thanks, Jackson.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Take care. Good luck.